Morning and welcome to the program. We're here till midday. Our number, if you'd like to join us, is 0800 80 1080. The email is Leighton at newstalkcb.co.nz. And you can text on 9292. We'll get on to the State of the Union speech as the morning progresses. I want to tell you a little story to begin the program. It'll take us places, I think. A few days ago, only a few days ago, an incident occurred. It worked like this. It was actually on Monday. It worked like this, that three young folk went to the beach. And they drove their car to the beach and they parked it and they locked it up and they went down to the beach and they went swimming and mucked around. There were two girls and a male, two females and a male. And after a while they went back to where they'd put their stuff. And on the beach, which was reasonably busy at the time, and somebody said, "Where are the car keys?" "Can't find the car keys. They're not where I put them." And that alerted everybody, and they headed back to the car, which was, of course, gone. It was gone. So they hightailed it to a place that they could make a phone call, and they rang the police, etc., and things were underway. Meantime, the car which had been stolen, not that other term that's only used in New Zealand, which is dumb, stupid, idiotic. It was stolen, not converted. You convert things when you go to the bank and you say, "I want some American money." It was stolen. And it was a small car, and it was a good car. It was someone's pride and joy, to the point where it was the pride and joy to the point where the owner had put it on not on Facebook, on Trade Me the day before. Why? Because he wanted a new car. But he was very proud of his little car. And the car was making its way elsewhere on the planet. It turns out that something interesting happened. It ended up with 6 young people in it. Now keep in mind, this is a very small car. 6 young people in it. And at a set of traffic lights, or near a set of traffic lights, it took off and it started weaving in and out of traffic and driving very fast for the circumstances. There happened to be a police car at the traffic lights. And the cop, as I understand the story, the cop thought, "I don't like the way that car's travelling, I've got to stop it." And he did. When I say he didn't actually stop it. That was really misleading. The car got stopped by another car. In fact, another couple of cars that car, the stolen car, ran into as it tried to make its escape and do a runner from the cops. In the interim, there was a police chopper in the sky, and there were police dogs and handlers and what have you not far away. And when the car got stopped by the other cars, it was written off, by the way. The 6 people inside, the 6 young folk inside, all took off in different directions. They all got collared. Dogs found them. They all got caught. Now, as it happens, at least some of that group were known to the police. Now, we know what known to the police means. Doesn't need interpreting. But the feeling was that not much was really going to happen as a result of this, because they were all underage. And really, my interpretation of this, let me put it this way, my interpretation of it was the frustration was that the whole procedure is a waste of time because nothing will happen because they're underage. So where do you think those 6 are going to go? Or at least some of them in the future? They'll go down the path of the path they're already on. They'll just travel further. That's the way that it works. If you get away with it, nobody can do it. You can't do anything because I'm underage. Then they'll give it another shot. Some of them will. So that leads us on to the discussion that's been had with regard to prison sentences. Now, Andrew Falloon, by the way, there's still some missing stuff from the car. Andrew Falloon wanted to pass a bill with regard to concurrent sentencing, which is something that we have, it's a bit like, the car conversion nonsense. Concurrent sentencing is a nonsense. You get discounts for multiple crimes. It's just a fact. You commit a crime that you get caught for, and you go to court and you get a sentence. Now, if there's 2 crimes, or 3 crimes, or 4 or 5 or 6 crimes, you get a sentence, you serve them all at the same time. It's nothing short of hilarious when you stop and think about it. You may as well keep committing crimes as long as you can, because you're not going to get a bigger sentence. Now, this was one of the arguments against rape charges and really serious sentences for rape. And I mean the old-fashioned style of violent rape on strangers, not the new adopted expanded version. When it was, well, you know what I'm saying. And the argument was used, and I had it put to me many times, was that, no, you don't want to introduce a more serious, you don't want to make it on the level of murder or anything, because then the person committing the crime has got nothing to lose by killing the victim. There is a certain amount of logic in that, although Andrew Little did his best, by default, to undermine that logic this morning in the answer that he was giving to a question. So, out of all this, we get these concurrent crimes rather than consecutive crimes. In America, this vacation period, just last week, in fact, or the week before, in the last couple of weeks in America, a man who abused a whole stack of young girls, using the position he had in the gymnastics game, got given a sentence of something like 140 years. It was a consecutive set of sentences, not concurrent. He's in there for life. He will never get out. In New Zealand, you do bad stuff and you murder somebody in the worst way and you get out, except on occasions where something is not concluded. Usually the attitude of the prisoner. But if you kill somebody in cold blood in New Zealand and you show an attitude that you were wrong and you shouldn't have done it, you'll get out in the end. And you might have other charges, including rape or whatever it might be, but you're serving consecutive sentences. So instead of getting you're serving concurrent sentences. So instead of getting 3 or 4 sentences strung together, which is what you deserve because they were different crimes, and sometimes they're even separated and committed on different people on different occasions. And then you get back to the discussion of what all this was about, which is about the size of the prison population, the number of people there, how long they're there for, we can't afford it, this, that, and the other. I get to the end of this and I think I don't have any problem with understanding why we have supposedly the second highest prison population in the world. We just keep churning them over. There is no serious punishment for committing violent, nasty crimes. You can say that people are in jail because they've got mental problems, and there are some issues with that, and I agree with it, and they should be dealt with. And they're not. But as long as we treat crime less than it should be treated, as long as the prisoner is getting more favourable treatment than the victim, which is what happens in many cases, nothing in this country is going to change. It's 13 to 9, numbers 0800 80 1080. News talks to me. It's 11 to 9. Let me just go back and cover off this story for those who are unfamiliar with it. The Labour's Justice Minister, Andrew Little, says that tougher sentencing was not what was needed to tackle a record prison population. Andrew Little has got plenty of experience in this particular field because we all know who he was, what he did before he became a member of Parliament. But he's on the wrong track, and unfortunately that's because, quite seriously, he's a lefty. And the lefties view things quite differently. They view them through a prism of Disney-esque proportions on occasions, as opposed to the realities of human nature and behavioural conditioning. And his argument was with Mr. Falloon's suggestion of consecutive sentencing is that it doesn't do anything to help the growing prison population. He's wrong, couldn't be more wrong, and I think he's too old to change. Russ, good morning.
Good morning to you, Leighton. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Good. You've really touched a good point here. This bugs the hell out of me. One of the things that I've got a problem with is the term life sentence. Life sentence doesn't exist anymore. Life sentence is 6 years for murder in New Zealand. That's disgraceful. It's just not. It's not acceptable. When you do the crime, you should do the time, and the time should suit the crime, and it doesn't. I mean, it's just a joke.
It's the life sentence is and I've argued this for as long as I could remember. We used to hang people. We don't, or put them down. We don't do it anymore. Now, I'm not going to argue with that. Instead of that, we transferred it to life sentence in jail. And then, of course, the do-gooders got to work, and they're still at it, beavering away. And there is no such thing as a life sentence, really. Not in the majority of cases. So that then is an abuse of language. It's a manipulation of the human mind, and it's something that's really wrong, and it should be tackled. And now's as good a time as any to pick it up again.
Yep, totally agree. It should be dropped from the language of sentencing because it just doesn't exist here in New Zealand. Full stop.
Indeed, Russ, appreciate it. Thanks for the call.
Thanks.
It's a little like all the other things that where the language has been stolen, changed, stolen, different meanings. Truth is lie, and lie is truth. You know what I'm saying? It's a little like that. It's just a misrepresentation that has now lodged itself in the population's mind. Mainly, you got a life sentence, but it's only 17 years or whatever it might be. It's not life. Even though you've taken a life, and it used to be a life for a life. News talks about it's 5 to 9. By the way, I'm glad that the Greens pot legislation was put down. It pleases me. Graham, good morning.
Yes, it pleases me too, Leighton. Hey, who do you think are responsible for underage criminals in this country?
Oh, all of us. We're all responsible. No, we're all responsible. It's our joint responsibility.
Yeah. You said like Cinder. Hey, no, mate, your parents are responsible. And like in the old days when you took out a high purchase and you're underage, your parents were responsible for the debt. So the same thing for crime. If you're an underage criminal and you get caught, your parents could do the time or the fine. And simple as that. On this other subject regarding the prisons filling up, well, I've noticed the prisons are filling up more since we've become more liberal with the punishment we hand out. So the less time they do, the more crime they do. So time to harden up on that and make life and send a strong message. If you're going to muck around with the law, you're going to be put away for a long time. And there's no visits, there's no dropping off of cell phones, no Sky TV and luxury accommodation anymore. Just make it tough so they don't want to go back. It's just an easy option to go to prison these days because it's probably better than your home life, you know.
Well, let's go back to the basics of this. Have we got time? Yes. Go back to the basics of this legislation that Falloon was wanting to introduce. And the response from Andrew Little. The point was that Falloon wants it changed so that judges can and or will give stiffer punishments when crimes are committed while people are on bail, parole, or in custody. Right?
Yep.
So let's say they're on bail. They've been charged with something. Let's assume that they're guilty. If they're not guilty of it, then they wouldn't be doing anything in the second instance, one would presume. But let's just say they're on bail. They go out and they commit another crime. Doesn't matter what sort of crime it is. Same crime, again, could be burglary, could be stealing cars, could be whatever it is. You can't tell me that they don't know what will happen to them. And they do know what will happen to them. They know that they will get a discounted sentence for the second crime.
But they also know that when they go to the put in the judge, all their prior convictions are not available to the people who are making decisions on them. And that's wrong in its own right too. I mean, if a 16-year-old knows that he's going to be pulled over for driving drunk in a car, well, he's going to be pulled over, but he's going to walk away with a wrist slap, and that's it. Even if he's killed somebody.
Graham, I've seen the attitude, and I'll remind you of it, because I've mentioned it before. I'll remind you of it after the news. Appreciate your call. Thank you. Have a good day. 0800 80 1080. Email is Leighton at newstalk.co.nz. You can text on 9292. I want to read you David's. I can't print at the moment. I can only read off screen because we're out of toner. Apparently we run out of toner and we have to order it. We can't have any backup. Things are getting tough. With regard to car conversion, David writes, there is an important distinction between conversion and theft. Conversion, or converted to one's own use, is where there is no intention to deprive the owner permanently of the vehicle. Theft occurs when there is intention to permanently deprive, and this is evidenced by such acts as painting, dismantling, or changing, erasing details such as engine and chassis numbers. To me, and at law, says David, car theft, under this definition, is more serious than car conversion. And I say BS. David, I'm not saying that to you. I'm saying that the distinction is BS. Quite simply it is. So what it says is, if I like the look of your Ferrari and I think I'm going to take it for a joyride, I break into it, I hotwire it, and off I go. And I might decide along the way, geez, I like this car. Probably a Ferrari's a bad example because it's going to be found fairly easily in the end or recognised. So make it an average car. And you decide, you're driving along and you decide, I think I'll keep it. I like it. At which point does it change from car conversion into car theft under the law? Now, the fact that you've broken into it and taken it is stealing it. This conversion stuff is garbage. Always was, always will be. And what it does is give young folk who know the ins and outs of the law, or think they do because they've been told by their mates or their elders or whatever. Well, come on, let's take it for a joyride because it's not stealing. It's just something called converting, and we'll only get a slap on the wrist. And which is one reason that they do it. Now, there's more to it than that. This particular car, for instance, it was stolen. Forget the conversion. And it got wiped out, written off. So you say it was converted, therefore it's not as bad as stealing, but the car's written off. It's the end result, the same result. The intention is to deprive somebody of their property. End of story. Be it for a day, a month, or forever. Shouldn't matter, doesn't matter in the greater scheme of things. It is taking somebody else's property. That's called stealing. And it's a nonsense. Oz, good morning.
Morning, Leighton. How are you?
I'm very good.
Good stuff. First time caller, so I'm a little bit nervous. So I'll try and keep me cool. But I was probably, what sticks in my head is at the close of your opening bit at the start of the show when you said something along the lines of with the way criminals are punished, that there'll be no change in this country. What's the change that you hope to see?
Well, it's not me. It's one that I endorse, though, and it's concurrent sentencing, which is what we have at the moment. So you go out and you commit a crime, and then associated with that is another crime and another crime and another crime. So you've got 4 charges for different crimes or different aspects of criminal behaviour, and you get sentenced on each one, and then you serve them at the same time. That means that you're only serving the sentence for the worst crime, the one with the biggest punishment, right? So let's say one deserves 6 months in jail, another one deserves 18 months, one deserves 3 months, and one deserves 5 years. So you get the 5-year sentence, but you get all the others thrown in for free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, if you're out on the reason for this is because it's been proposed by an MP, Andrew Falloon, that it should be changed to consecutive sentencing so that you serve them one after the other. They're added on to each. And so instead of serving 5 years, you serve 15 years or whatever it might be, because you have committed different crimes. Each one needs to be punished. And if you're on bail or on parole and you commit a crime, which is where he's at basically, the MP, he wants the punishment to be more serious by serving consecutive sentences rather than so that you're on bail for bashing somebody up and putting them in hospital, and while you're on bail, you go out and you hit somebody else, or you go out and you rob somebody, or whatever it is that you might do. So you have to serve both those sentences, but not at the same time. One is added on to the other. So that's what it's about.
Okay, so to be I agree with you, and from the point of view of consecutive and whatever the other word was. Sorry,
concurrent.
Concurrent sentencing. I guess what's the reasoning behind the consecutive sentencing? Like, why would you think it would be more beneficial to give them excuse me, sorry, not the concurrent. What would be the reasoning behind giving them, in theory, the longer added up sentence versus the one that is just taking the larger and dismissing all the other consequences from the other sentences?
Do you ever go shopping and you buy a shirt and you buy one and you get one at half price? Something along those lines. You've seen that sort of advertising even if you've never done it.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So this is the same sort of thing. Commit one crime, get the next crime at half price or the next one for free. Where is the justice in that? Where is the sense in that?
Oh, no, I agree. I guess I'm sort of thinking along the lines of that I guess in my head I'm thinking, in the ideal world, of course, this is a utopia which is unrealistic. Of course, there needs to be justice, but people wouldn't. In the ideal world, people wouldn't commit crimes, of course. You know, I just feel like is our goal to sort of manage crime, or is it to, like, for instance, would.
All right, stop it. You're struggling a bit. Let me wrap it up this way.
Yeah.
Somebody kills a member of your family.
Okay.
Or if you don't want to take it that far, somebody bashes up a member of your family. Like there was a young fella who this is now a current case, so we won't be talking about it, but there was a young fella who died in hospital over the weekend after being physically abused, shall we say, in the middle of Auckland, in the middle of the night. But let's skip that. Shouldn't have even raised it. A member of your family gets bashed up.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy gets caught, the perpetrator gets caught, goes to court, and the bashing is quite serious, and your family member is deprived of some aspect of their quality of life for the rest of their life. So they're still alive, but they're not dead. So the perpetrator gets a sentence that is far less than could have been given under the appropriate legislation, and far less than what you think is appropriate. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about it? How do you feel about the justice system under those circumstances?
Simply put, you would think justice isn't being served. I guess it just depends what. I don't know. I guess for me, I go back in my head and I think, what's the purpose of the I guess, yeah. I know I'm beating around the bush a little bit, but if we could stop crime prior. It feels like, people are doing crime on the outside, so things are happening, and justice is in there to sort of whack them on the hand when it happens. But I guess in the ideal world, you'd probably try and change it prior to that point, Right. And I can see where you're coming from.
Where I'm coming from is that justice must be seen to be done, and if the population generally has the impression that justice is not done, then the justice system isn't working. End of story. Thanks for the call. 9:17. The news talks to be 9:21. Rex, morning.
Good morning. It's welcome back. And like the great Darren Hinch, you've got more brains and logic than most politicians.
Never heard him called the great Darren Hitch before, but I'll accept.
Well, he is, because he stood up for against paedophiles and that. But anyway, so I've been burgled 3 times, and I've also had neighbours from Howell, Black Power neighbours, side the cops on speed dial. From the time of Jim Bolger, every justice minister has been a joke. The law system favours the criminal, and if you plead guilty to a crime or such and such, whatever you've done, you get basically half your sentence wiped off. I agree with you that there needs to be a big change in the law. Youth criminals and teen criminals need to be made accountable. And I agree with everything you say, and I'm not necessarily a great mind, but I think, as I said, you've got most of the New Zealanders on your sides, and what you're talking is common sense and logic. I
like the logic bit. Common sense. Common sense is desirable also.
Well, one of the cases that got burgled was a storage place in Napier with electric fences, security cameras, everything. For some reason, that was turned off one night, and 2 under 17-year-old guys broke in. Now, the ringleader had stolen over 20 cars and burnt most of them out. There's multiple crimes, and we're breaking into that storage facility. He's basically close with all the cars he's stolen over there. He's closely done over nearly $1 million worth of damage. And when he got picked up in Takabau, he'd stolen another car to go and visit his girlfriend.
Yep.
And all he got was 6 months in youth jail and 6 months supervision. Yep. Restorative of justice was a joke because we saw him and he wasn't really sorry at all. And he had stolen over 20 cars and a lot he had burnt out, and he'd done multiple crimes. And all he got was 6 months in jail, youth jail, and 6 months supervision. And
he came out and he would have done the same thing over, more likely than not. Rex, appreciate the call. Thank you. It is 9:23. News Talk should be. Now, there are some people on this planet who are worth more than others. It's just a fact. And it's a judgment call, but I'm very happy to make the judgment on occasions. One of those people works in this office with me. Her name is Anne-Marie, and she's been here a long time. She's known to just about everybody. And for me, I've just found out, she's just put the new toner in the printer, and I've just found out that she walked from here to Queen Street and back to get the toner in the weather that's outside. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You really are gold. You know?
Well, I heard you were whinging on air about the toner.
Anything to stop Smith's whinging. Anyway, thank you, darling. You are seriously solid gold. It's 9:24, and she is 9:24. News Talks at me. News Talks at me, 9:27. I understand that the urgent courier was going to take 2.5 hours to deliver. So she walked down. Some people are outstanding. Graham, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Leighton. I threw my policeman's hat away about 30 years ago, but
I'm sorry, you threw your what?
My policeman's hat away about 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I distinctly recall a difference between car conversion and theft. Now, theft, if you, at the time of taking the car, if you have intent to permanently retain the car or permanently deprive the...
Yeah, I ran through this via an email just a short while ago.
Right. And, of course, conversion is if you loan your car to somebody or you take it with the intention of not keeping it, but it can't be returned to the owner in the condition that it was in at the time of taking, you can be found guilty of theft. So, in other words, if you deface it or devalue the car and it can't be returned in its condition at the time of the taking, you can be charged with theft in respect of that.
And your position as a policeman in those days, your attitude to that?
Yeah, I think most people stole cars because they took them for a damn good reason. The car conversion was there just for, perhaps the joyrider or the car or the person who went along to the local car yard and test drove a car and took it, didn't take it back, or perhaps even in the instance of a rental car where it was taken and a person exceeded their authority or the terms of the contract, then they too could also be charged with theft.
All right, so very quickly, taking into account those last two examples you gave, like a test drive or a rental car, was the car conversion terminology and interpretation extended beyond what you think it should what it did originally mean?
No, it was very seldom ever applied, Leighton. Very seldom ever applied. But it was there under the Crimes Act, and
So somebody who, and you might have missed it at the beginning of the program, and I'm in trouble because I'm overshooting, but at the beginning of the program I related a story that I'm familiar with firsthand with some people whose car was stolen from the beach on Monday, taken.
Yes.
And it got written off because they wouldn't stop for the police.
Well, it's stolen.
Well, of course it was. But they still, the terminology is still utilised that it was converted because they didn't take it with the intention of keeping it, and that's just garbage. And I believe that anything on the statute books that talks about conversion should be eradicated, and it should have been long ago. I've got to go. Thank you, Graham. 'Tis 27 to 10. Leighton, you missed the point. If you steal a car and get caught, it's conversion. If you get away with it, it's theft. All the cars thieves are listening and thinking, geez, we just need to claim we were going to return it, and it's not theft. Choice. Facetiousness at its almost best. Jonathan, morning.
Morning. How are you, Leighton?
Very good, thank you.
Now, I'm going under a pseudonym because I'm actually a police prosecutor, so...
Wasn't me, I didn't do it.
That's what they all say. Hey, just with the youth thing, I mean, the difference between conversion and theft is basically theft, you've got to intend to deprive the owner. That's the difference. So if someone says, well, I just took his car to get from A to B, there's no intent to permanently deprive the owner. So the way the Theft Act is written, unless you intended to actually deprive them, it's not a theft, hence the conversion. However,
all right, sorry, you finish before I say anything.
Well, what I was going to say is, regards all the youth of today, Judge Beecroft is jumping up and down, and rightly so in some cases, saying, look, we're not doing enough to help the youth. However, it's not so much the youth offending, it's the culture around it. Often these kids are coming from highly dysfunctional families. I've heard earlier callers say, well, let's punish the parents. I mean, these parents are struggling to get by in life themselves, let alone raise kids. So where does the state's responsibility start and finish? And if anybody's got an answer to that, well, they'll be Prime Minister in the next week. It's just a very difficult thing. No one likes the kids doing the offending, but it's the way they live, their influences around them. Kids are very much into the here and now. I don't condone it. I think a lot of kids are just trouble. And to be honest, Leighton, we can spot them a mile away. We know who our bread and butter clients are and who are just one-offs.
Let me give you an example, and I've just remembered I was going to do this after the news at 9, and I didn't. Let me give you an example of attitude. And this is the major issue. Everything starts with attitude. Would you agree?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So I got rear-ended a few years back by a 16-year-old who had passengers in his car when he shouldn't have. He had prior to that, he had a prior charge and conviction for exactly the same thing, as it turned out. When the police turned up, and it was a female police officer, he refused to talk to her. He just said, I'm not talking to you, and walked away. And was quite adamant that he wasn't going to have anything to do with her. Now, that's the attitude. that I'm talking about. When did it happen that young people decided that they didn't have to talk to the cops, they didn't have to treat the police with any respect whatsoever, and they could do their own thing and tell the police to F off?
Well, Leighton, look, that's just been something that's been evolving. I mean, I don't like it any more than you do, and I'm wearing the uniform. But that's the way the law is written. Word gets around, you know, if it's a good thing. That's the exception rather than the rule, I would say. But I think the Youth Act needs to go back and have a look at it, a look at itself, because basically where they go from is they say, well, look, most kids will, well, not most kids, but kids who offend, out of that lot that offend, the 100 that offend, only 10% of them will go on to re-offend because they go through the family group conference process, and you know, it's a bit about shame, taking responsibility, all of that sort of thing. If there's buy-in from the parents and if they can, you know, get the follow-up action through support groups and community. So you've only got 10 out of that 100 that will go on to re-offend a second time. Out of that 10, only 10% of them will go on to re-offend again. And that's where we say the police, well, don't say officially, but we all think, well, that's where we should be drawing the line and saying, well, okay, you guys are going to keep going. We can spot them a mile away. You know, as I said, they're our bread and butter clients. And they are one-man crime waves or little gang crime waves, and the law doesn't support us to stop them. Now, they've just raised the age of a youth now or an adult, or it's coming through to 20. Well, that's just going to create mayhem. One, there's no government agency's got the resources to deal with these people till they're 20. And two, it's unnecessary. It's just, what are we doing that for? You know, it is an infinitesimal amount of kids that come through our door that continue to reoffend non-stop. It's a really, really small amount, but they create a lot of problems.
All right. Now, there's something that you said that I find fault with, and that was you keep using the term reoffend. Only 10% reoffend, and then over that group, only 2% reoffend. What we're talking about here is actually getting caught.
Well,
how many times do they reoffend, for instance, before they get caught? How many times?
It's like these full-time burglars. You know, there are people out there that are full-time burglars. We know they're doing it. It's a matter of us being able to catch them. Exactly. You know, it's a job. It is a job for some of these career criminals, and you know, they take precautions the same as a doctor takes precautions not to cut himself or transfer fluids. You know, for them, their precautions are not getting caught, and that's just how the world goes, Leighton, in any country.
But the don't forget that this, or maybe you weren't listening earlier. I'm not holding that against you. It's not a charge. That this was just a sidebar. The conversion aspect of this was just a sidebar that I threw in as an example of something to do with the current debate about consecutive versus concurrent sentencing. Now, you might want to give me a quick take on how you feel about that. So you've got someone who's up on 5 charges, convicted of all, and they get sentenced for each one separately, and then they serve it concurrently. How does that work for you?
Well, look, for some, it's just a matter of what we call clear-ups. You know, we've got them, and it's down to the judge. And essentially, all of the sentencings are down to the judge, and there is no control, checks, or balances. They give it the big one in the the lawyers and the judges and the legal department saying there's all sorts of checks and balances and etc. But there's not really. If the judge decides this is what he's going to give, there's very little right of redress unless he's manifestly wrong, and the appeal process, etc., etc. Now, the lawyers will all appeal if somebody else got 5 thefts of motor vehicle and he got 6 months home detention, and then his client comes up for 4 thefts of motor vehicle and gets 6 months imprisonment. The lawyers will be quick as a wink to appeal that. But if their client comes up and gets a 6-month deferred sentence, you can guarantee they won't appeal that, saying it's manifestly unjust. And for the police to appeal it, we have to go to the Crown and say, hey, this is manifestly wrong, and the Crown will say 90% of the time, this is not worth our powder and shot.
If the law was changed so that consecutive sentencing became regular as opposed to concurrent, would you support it?
Well, it is regular now, consecutive sentencing.
All right, so
for mysterious offenders.
All right, so hang on. So if you got somebody who's on bail and they go out and they commit another crime, should that be added on to the onto the first sentence when it's given?
Well, you'd like to think so, but the way the court thinks is that, well, this is all in the scope of that crime, and if you breach your bail, depends what you've done. If you've reoffended, done another burglary, well, you won't be getting out. And that should, in theory, show on the sentencing the judge gives. But
it doesn't, necessarily.
No, it doesn't. Like you say, I think the key, Leighton, is justice has to be seen to be done, and in the public's eye, justice is not being done.
Exactly my point a little earlier. Jonathan, appreciate it. Thanks for the call.
No problem.
News Talks at me, it's 18 to 10. Email is Leighton at newstalksab.co.nz, 15 to 10. Richard, morning.
Good morning, Leighton. Interesting thing about the justice system is that language has a lot to do with it. You can hear it with what the lawyers say, what the judges say. You could actually hear it in your immediately previous caller. A play on words, shall we say, or a twisting of intent by delivery. And I think that's something that's seriously affected our justice system and logic and common sense. But I think a lot of changes could be made by just removing one phrase that should never be spoken in a court, and that's extenuating circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Because, boy, that's all you ever hear. You know a crime has been committed, and you described the crime earlier today. It's a crime. It was theft. It was theft leading to other crimes that ended up with vehicles damaged, people misbehaving, loss of assets, the whole kit caboodle. So
well,
it's pretty easy to look at it, isn't it?
Stop there for a second, because you've just lit a candle for me. Because here's the story. Why is it that most of those who do runners and won't stop for the police, why is it that they do it? In the majority of cases, and probably by far the majority of cases, it's because the car is stolen.
Probably, yeah.
Right? So, not all, but the majority. The car is stolen. So, your little point or extension of one crime leads to another is exactly one of the targets that we should be making.
I agree.
It's not just the first crime. It leads to a second crime. It's a little like lying to your wife or lying to your boss or whoever it might be. Once you've made that first false statement, you keep backing it up and telling more, and they get bigger and bigger, and in the end you pay the price.
Yeah, well, it's a step of bad decisions. However, at the end of the day, we have a law. It says something. You did that. That's wrong. Now comes the discussion points where people go, oh, yeah, but because of extenuating circumstances, because of this. No. This is something that the justice system has trained the criminal system to go, here's your lever, use it. Because we're going to bend over backwards with this. We're going to use it as a methodology to reduce a sentence because we can't afford to keep putting people into a box. We're going to use it as a way to look at the youth. And really, I think this is a bad way to look at it. They're young, therefore they're stupid. Therefore, we will treat them as stupid and we will let them get away with stuff. And it used to be 16, 18. Now it's going back to 20. Hey, at 20, you're not stupid. At 20, you're either in university or you're working a job or you're not, but you're not stupid. But you've been told that you are.
All right.
Because you're stupid, you can do this stuff.
Now, what's been raised to 20?
Just following on from what was said by the previous caller, he's saying that the youth classification is going to be lifted back to 20.
I should have asked him. I should have asked him to detail that actually. But if that's because I've got to say that if I thought it was raised to 17 or 18. Anyway, the point being
17, 18, and now they're talking about going to 20.
Well, if it goes to 20, then everything's got to change. The drinking age, maybe the driving age, the boating age, it's all got to go up.
Well, if you're going to say you lot are stupid, so you're not going to be responsible as much as the next person. Yeah, you're not responsible, so
exactly.
You don't get it.
Exactly. So I want to follow up on that. Appreciate it, Richard. Thanks for the call. News Talks at BT is 11 to 10. Margaret, good morning.
Yes, morning, Leighton. I've just about given up the will to live after listening to that policeman. Now, our justice system was based on the Westminster British system, was it not?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, I've learned listening to you guys, because I did wonder, it was Bolger who set the current legislation. Am I right in saying that?
Which current legislation?
Well, what we've got now. That's what I'm hearing from you. I've been listening all morning.
No, I've not mentioned Bolger at all.
Yes, Bolger has been mentioned. The name Bolger has been mentioned, as I've been thinking all morning, who installed this current legislation? Because what I wanted to ask was, have governments been tweaking the original British system?
So which aspect of the legislation are you referring to?
I'm referring to what you have said, which is absolutely unbelievable. If you want to put me in a box, I'm a left-wing conservative, but I find it absolutely astonishing. I didn't know about this six-strike business. Give me a break. Now, do you know what I'm thinking? The only way that we can actually change legislation, because I don't trust the legal system at all now, like most people, is possibly through referendum.
Referendum are not obligatory, though, are they?
Well, what can we do? We can't just sit back like dummies, like New Zealanders.
Oh, why not? We've been doing it for decades.
Well, I haven't.
No, but generally, quite seriously. We have. Most of the people listening to this program, this station, I would suggest, don't fall into this category. But we are not the majority. The majority, there's various categories, but there are various views and interpretations of how things should work and how they shouldn't work and what have you. But bit by bit, inch by inch, if you want, step by step, things have been undermined and attitudes have. I mean, if you're born into today's society, or let's say you're born into the current society and you're now 18 years old, you have a totally different view of. Oh,
I know that. Look, I'm 70, and I've seen it all, and I'm a political junkie, and I have looked at it all, I've studied it all, and my favourite words are logic. And it's got to come into it, common sense. Now that's gone right out the window.
Correct. There is no common sense anymore. That's what we are told. There's no such thing as common sense.
Well, there is.
Of course there is.
And not a lot of us have it. And the sooner that people wake up, I get so angry. You can hear how irate I am.
Well, do you want to know where it started? It started with Muldoon.
Oh, yeah.
Or Muldoon.
Toothy.
No, I'll tell you why I say that. And I'm only being half serious, but this was a huge contribution to the change of attitude.
Yeah.
When Muldoon in 1980, from memory, could have been 81, but I think it was 1980, when he changed the definition of solo parent, solo mother.
Oh, yeah.
So that it included everybody. As in, if you were a widow, if you were widowed, you became categorised as a solo mother. If you were divorced, you got categorised as a solo mother. Whereas originally, the term meant, as far as I've always been concerned, the term meant that you were an unmarried mother.
I didn't realise that, because at that particular time I was married.
Well, so, the point being that was a change in definition. It included people who resisted it, who didn't want to at the time. I remember it distinctly. They didn't want to be called solo mothers because they were in a different category to what everybody accepted as a solo mother. And there was the change in legislation to be all-inclusive, and that's one of the things that changes the meaning of language, the meaning of legislation, the meaning and interpretation of people's positions. And it was wrong.
This just reaffirms to me, thank you, Leighton, that my thinking all along, and it endorses what a total bash-up this national government is. And thank God for Jacinda. That's all I have to say.
Well, I'll leave you with this thought. If you didn't like it before, it's only going to get worse under her.
Come on. Don't be so negative.
The way that listen, the things that disturb you, the things that bother you, are going to expand under a left-wing progressive government. Wait and see. If you don't believe me, wait and see. It is the things that you're objecting to will continue to develop down that same path, because that's where the left takes you. Thanks for the call. Ring me back when you realise that. One day it'll happen. You'll wake up in the morning, you'll hear a news bulletin, you say, geez, Leighton was right. I've got to tell him. I hope I'm still here. It is, it's 9:50 to 10. I've got plenty more where all this came from, by the way, and we haven't even touched on yesterday's State of the Union speech, and we need to, and we will. It is 10:07. Email is Leighton at newstalk.co.nz, and you can text on 9292. I just, one thing leads to another in one's mind, as we all know, and I was about to launch into something else, but I thought this is probably appropriate if I can lay my fingers on it in my producer-produced folder of news stories this morning, and I can't. I was looking for the story on literacy. I saw it earlier. Anyway, the point being that I was about to quote you this. A problem arises, writes Sarah from Hawke's Bay. Bay of Plenty, sorry, didn't mean to insult you. From Bay of Plenty. Problem arises when, as a nation, we endorse lawmakers who seek to call black white and white black, to appease minorities who would like to water down the consequences of wrongdoing. Human rights have made many of the wrongs okay. When we fail to acknowledge that there needs to be some moral absolutes as benchmarks for our laws, the lines between right and wrong start to become very blurred. Historically, our nation's laws have been established upon Judeo-Christian values. If asked to state a list of what they would say was wrongful, most people would probably default to many of these values, as by adhering to them, many of a nation's ills are alleviated. History has revealed that it can be very dangerous to allow a majority to determine what is right and wrong at any given point of time. To label wrong or right by the people's sight is creating a brand of ethics that misses the mark and fails to achieve stability in society. Let me go back to that one little point. Most people would probably default to many of these values by adhering to them. Many of a nation's ills are alleviated. History has revealed that it can be very dangerous to allow a majority to determine what is right and wrong at a given point in time. And that was what the purpose of the American Constitution was. And it's what the purpose of the college electoral system was. To prevent large states, very populous states, overriding the rights of minority states, etc., and preventing the majority from deciding what the minority could and couldn't do. And it worked very well, or pretty well, up until fairly recently, when people started to override it. And it goes back to my other realization, and that is that, and you can reduce this actually probably to the fact that, evil happens when good men do nothing. I'm sorry, when good people do nothing, or whichever way you want to interpret it. The principle is really what's important. And if we all sit back and just expect that somebody else will take care of it, or we all sit back and think that, this is the way it's been all my life, so why should I worry about it? It'll always be that way. Because there is no there is very little historical literacy that exists in the West these days. There just isn't. Which is why an 18-year-old generally doesn't have a clue about so many things anymore. Think they do, but don't. And unless for some reason they're alerted to it, that's the way they stay. And so countries change, and not necessarily for the better. I hope that made sense. Lionel, good morning.
Hi, Leighton. I get absolutely angry when I hear about crime and how it's dealt with on a global scale, or if you want to look at it in New Zealand. I have attended a few talks in New Zealand and in South Africa, obviously, where I've heard the parents or the actual victim of the crime, be it burglary or rape or kidnap or hijacking. I've attended some of those talks, and the most recent one that I attended some time ago in New Zealand was when the parents had a teenage boy that was murdered, and the person, the criminal is actually out of jail, and it is, I often wonder where does the victim fit in all of this whole thing. These parents are actually sitting on a board. I think it's a sensible. I think it's called the Sensible Sentencing Trust or something like that. And these politicians, I swear to God, the more they study, the thicker they become, including this bloody Andrew Littlehead. Seriously, I don't know where these people come from. I mean, whatever they are smoking, I seriously need some of that stuff, You do? I'm getting so excited about this thing. I can't understand where these people are coming from. Where do the victims fit into this whole thing of being, why do the victims not have a say? They just read a statement, but the judge makes his own decision. I think it's a load of rubbish, actually. The person that should determine the punishment is actually the victim.
I don't agree with that. I can't agree with that. Because if that were the case, hang on, if that were the case, if the victim determined the punishment, then you'd be back to the death penalty next to no time. You'd have all sorts of extraordinary punishments delivered to that would be way over the top. There would be no consistency either.
No, I really disagree with that, Leighton. If you talk to, I've listened to the victim I've listened to these parents whose child got murdered, and they are the most loveliest Kiwi families that actually have a brain cell and that can think clearly, and are more than happy for the perpetrator to foresee his life in prison. Why can that not happen? Why must the murderer be set free? Why must the rapist be set free? I'm so sorry. The victims need to be heard, and the less the victims are heard, at one point it's going to become quite explosive. Seriously,
What's going to become explosive?
Well, I think, people are going to start revolting and their anger is going to come out in different ways. Victims are not heard properly. Society, society as a whole are not being heard. I mean, who commits murder and is set free? Who rapes a teenager or a woman and is set free? Who does that? What society does that? Who have we, what are we becoming? It's so infuriating when you have all these lawyers and all these educated people coming up with all these fancy words and the murderers.
Well, hang on, Lionel. I'm going to wrap it this way for you. I'm sure you probably know the answer yourself, but the answer lies in the fact that there is now a greater division in society, particularly in the West, between left and right, which means between between right and wrong, about how the world works or should work. One side of that argument believes that the world works in certain ways, and human nature is a massive part of that. And the other side believes that the world should work in this way, and when it doesn't, then it's not their fault, it's somebody else's fault. Appreciate the call. Thank you. 10:17, News Talk ZB.
Bob had a little incident in the water these holidays. He's a little embarrassed and doesn't really like to talk about it. His whole family saw. They even had to cut their holiday short.
Hey!
I'm talking about your boat, Bob.
Oh, yeah, fair point.
Get your boat repaired by the Yamaha Outboard Engine Specialists. Benjamin Boating Centre, 14 Saunders Place, Avondale, and benjamin.co.nz. Probably still keep an eye on the old beer belly though, eh, Bob?
Hey! You get blinded this morning? Man, that sunstrike, really hard to drive.
Nah, mate, I've got this awesome product called Easy View.
Easy View?
Bought it from Countdown for only $20. It eliminates sunstrike so I can focus on the road.
Really? Is it that good? I saw it on TV and I was interested, but thought it was just another gimmick.
Seriously, mate, it is the real deal. It works, and a no-brainer. $20. You can't go wrong.
Cool, I think I will. Where'd you get it from again?
The RMD Easy View. Get yours in the As Seen on TV area in Countdown stores.
If you're looking for a property, we've got the perfect place for you. It's got 27,000 kitchens, 23,200 gardens, 66,000 bedrooms, and 39,069 bathrooms. Realestate.co.nz has properties from every real estate brand in the country. So it's the perfect place to find your perfect property. Realestate.co.nz.
Hi, Mike from Waitemata Back Care Beds, and the best king coil bed since we introduced this brand in New Zealand 25 years ago. The new Coventry, Daintree and Park Lane king coil ranges each come with a firm, medium and plush comfort model, and with the variety of reflex pocket spring support systems, there's one to suit every back. If you're seeking a truly great new bed, you've got to test fly one of these. 5 shops Auckland wide. Check out Waitemata Back Care Beds today.
Waitemata Back Care Beds and Beds and Beds.
Get these fresh picks for summer this long weekend at Palmer's. Tropical hibiscus, now $12.99, save $6. There's 25% off all glazed pots, and grow your own delicious blueberries with 15% off all varieties. Time to go to Palmer's.
At Stuff Fibre. Kia ora. Our customer service team are all New Zealand based, just like you. Get super fast fibre broadband, just $49 for the first 3 months. Stuff Fibre. We heart internet. Valid for new customers only. For T's and C's visit stufffibre.co.nz.
Wake up with the best.
It's the Mike Hosking Breakfast, thanks to BNZ.
I'll make you a prediction. He's going to retire before the end of the term and his party's over, which means for you and the Greens need to be pretty close to 50% to remain viable.
I need you to write that down.
I'm happy to. I'm happy to.
I've never ever made predictions about Mr. Peter's future simply because he is a man of his own destiny.
The Mike Hosking Breakfast, thanks to BNZ.
On News Talk ZB.
Morning, Keith.
Yeah, good morning, Leighton. Look, I agree with
wholeheartedly with everything that you've been talking about this morning. There's one thing that I think is needful in this country, and I know there's a lot of people that will argue against it, and that's our prisons. Now, we don't need to build another single prison. All we've got to do is to tender out our prisoners to countries like Indonesia, and if we tender them out, we'd only have to pay probably a quarter of the cost, or even less, to keep those prisoners in jail. And everybody that's in jail that has a sentence that's of more than a year.
Oh, well, seeing you want to go down that road, how about we send them by sea and make sure they don't reach the destination?
Well, that's a hell of a good idea.
Drown them along the way like a kitten.
Eh?
No, I'm just being facetious.
Yeah, I sort of understand how you feel. But, those countries over there, it would get rid of all the people that are taking drugs into our prisons to visit the bros that are on big sentences, and I would just send a boat over there, a ship over there once a year. Every sentence would start when they got to...
Well, maybe you'd like to send them to Aceh.
Yeah, too right.
Do you know where Aceh is?
Yeah, I know exactly where it's over in Indonesia.
That's correct.
Well,
and the reason that I mention Aceh is because I'm going to love this story. New regulation in Aceh earlier this month to several airlines urging the firms to comply with Islamic law. Starting on Wednesday, air stewardesses, not cabin crew, air stewardesses are expected to wear the hijab and appropriate clothes as per Sharia law. According to the police instructions, the police chief of Aceh Besa, Mawadi Ali. What else can I tell you? Although all women, irrespective of religion, are required to wear the hijab, the law is not strictly implemented in the case of non-Muslims. Sharia law in Aceh criminalises homosexual relations, adultery, gambling and alcohol consumption, with flogging the usual form of punishment. Indonesia is the home to... it just gives a bit of background, a bit of history. But several airlines, doesn't name them, have been told that Muslim stewardesses are to wear the hijab. That's the whole... So maybe I could make a few suggestions about it. Maybe I won't. But, let's just hope this doesn't spread. 10:23, News Talk ZB. I mean, imagine if Air New Zealand was I don't know whether they do or not. They might. I have no idea whether Qantas, Air New Zealand, were employing some Muslim cabin crew, stewardesses, and they get a letter in the mail saying, we expect your planes that land here to have Muslim women in hijabs. I wonder how that would go. On a much more pleasant subject, to Sales Restaurant at West Haven about Little John. Good morning.
Well, a great morning to you, Leighton. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
I haven't seen you for ages, mate.
It's been way too long, and I'm going to rectify it in multiples.
Absolutely.
In the very near future, by the way.
Very good. So last weekend we had the introduction of the Harbour Bridge lights. Now, obviously, we have the best spot because we've got the best views of the Harbour Bridge and West Haven Marine, of course. And it was a really amazing light show. I was so impressed. I was thinking, what are they going to do and how's it going to... So it's on every daily basis, it's in a static format, which looks beautiful and highlights it. It's fantastic. But last weekend, they did this light show on it, and it was incredible, and it changed, and it had kind of portrayed pictures and things on the side, and it was really, really amazing. Now, the cool thing is that they're going to be running that whole light show thing again this weekend, and the best place to see it is Sales Restaurant. So not only are you going to get great food and service, but also you're going to get a spectacular light show and the bridge light lit up all night. Now, that starts on Friday nights, on Saturday night, Sunday and Monday. It's on Waitangi Day as well on the 6th, but we are actually closed for that day of public holidays as we usually are. But then it's again on the 7th. So you've got plenty of opportunity to come down to Sales to see the special Waitangi Day light show on the Harbour Bridge. Now, we will be busy. We've got availability on every day that we're open except for the Tuesday. So we've got availability tonight, tomorrow, and right through the weekend. So there's no problem. You can go online and book there at salesrestaurant.co.nz. But it's just spectacular. They've done an amazing job. I
haven't yet seen it, so I'm going to come and see it. You can book on 378-9890 or salesrestaurant.co.nz. News talks about 27 after 10. I remember, writes Martin, I remember you discussing this subject some time ago. At the time, I copied the following item from the Dom Post that had appeared on that day. Quote, a woman who abused a district court judge's grant of a delay to her prison sentence to attend a medical appointment has been given an extra month behind bars. Judge Ian Mill granted Demelza Mills, 37, sentenced to 3.5 years in prison on methamphetamine charges in April, a delay of 5 hours before she had to hand herself in at prison. When she failed to appear at the Tower Institution, police began a search. She was given a month's jail for breaching her bail condition to be served concurrently with her current prison time. Oh, dear. Do you think the joke's on the judge? I don't remember that. But do you think the joke's on the judge? No, the joke's on all of us. Back up. What was the Lord story?
A couple of New Zealanders, it's only just appeared, a couple of New Zealanders being sued in an Israeli court for allegedly convincing pop star Lorde to cancel her concert performance there.
Doesn't say who they are or where they live.
No, I can't tell you anymore at the moment. The headline's only just gone in, so...
Well, I don't know how that works, but I'll be interested to find out.
Yeah, more at 11.
Okay.
Have it for you.
Thank you. 28 to 11, News Talk ZB. It concerns me, writes Pam, it concerns me that the scumbags who took, this relates to the story I told earlier this morning, but I know the people involved. It concerns me that the scumbags who stole somebody else's car are likely to be treated lightly. Well, they're underage, you see. They obviously had to be watching the group on the beach. They take the keys, etc. Then they had to go and find the car and take off for their joyride. And no matter their age, they should be made responsible for their actions. The weak justice handed out on this type of to this type of thieves at the moment does not deter them at all. For them, it's just another day out, and the same thing will happen tomorrow. They knew where the car was because one of the things I left out, because there's a fair bit of detail, is that they saw them. Somebody, one of the people in the car that was stolen, one of the owners, if you like, noticed that one of the party in the stealing group was standing right nearby when they got out of the car in the first place. Didn't take any notice of it, just recognised that that particular individual, a female, was there. But the rest of it, I agree with you, actually. Now, I want to, before going anywhere else, I want to read you this particular contribution on Labour's sentencing quandary. Labour have painted themselves into something of a cell block corner with their police and justice policies and promises on a collision course. While this is going on, New Zealand First are yelling from the sidelines that the tag and release policies of the National Party are over. They have pledged to reduce the prison population by 30%, while promising to make communities safer by increasing police numbers by 1,800. The biggest single increase in decades. Not forgetting that they are repealing the three strikes law as well. When I was in the police, says the author, the more boots on the ground, the more the key got turned on the cell door. That's a given. More thieves, thugs and drug dealers will be charged and imprisoned as the boots on the ground increase. To be honest, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. there is a lot of crime happening currently going unresolved. Forget there is a lot of crime happening currently going unresolved. While in principle I agree with the sentiment, Mr Falloon's bill is something of a political stunt to bring focus to Labour's justice quandary. He will expect it to be defeated if it's ever drawn from the ballot, because even New Zealand First would want to see it fail, because its success would worsen its own coalition position with Labour on reducing the prison population. It's an old and well-kicked football, this one. Sadly, successive governments have continued to miss their chance to act with swiftness, certainty and severity to those who violate the laws and our citizens. It's like a balloon full of water being squeezed in different places. The balloon just bulges out and somewhere else. The dog is chasing its tail with greater futility as reoffending and the root cause for it remain largely unchallenged. Politicians playing games with the scales of justice will not make a blind bit of difference. Sadly, the notion of you do the crime, you do the time is a fallacy in New Zealand, and the collision course this government is on with prison numbers will highlight that. And I think the author is spot on. Spot on. It's... How can I put it without sounding dramatic? It's one of the number of contributions to New Zealand's demise, in my humble opinion, that we simply will not deal with. Now, you think that's... Some people are saying, you're being dramatic, you're being stupid. You know, you're just a right-wing nutcase. I'd happily accept being a right-wing nutcase if that was the definition that was applicable. Bottom line is, we complain that we've got to the point that we have, frequently, without looking at the real causes of why. And more importantly, without addressing them, or even attempting to. It's somebody else's fault, you know? Somebody else's fault. Extenuating circumstances. Blah, 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 blah. The education system has as much to do with it as anything else. I'm not proportioning blame equally. It just has as much to do with it as anything else. Doing away with flogging in schools, which served a purpose and had results. 23 to 11 News Talk ZB. Number is 0800 80 1080. Now, courtesy of whale oil, here is a little detail of that news story at 10:30-ish. And this is how it reads. The two social justice bullies who cowed Lorde into cancelling her concert in Tel Aviv are now on the receiving end of a damages claim. Two New Zealanders being sued for allegedly convincing Lorde to cancel her performance in Israel. I'm just reading it as it is. A Jewish New Zealander, Justin Sachs, and Palestinian New Zealander, Nadia Abu Shanab, wrote an open letter to Kiwi pop sensation asking her to boycott her Israeli tour dates. The two argued the concert would show support for Israel's occupation of Palestine. An Israeli legal rights group called Shuret Hadin said it is suing the two Kiwis. What I'm really looking for is how they can do it successfully. Shuret Hadin said Wednesday it had filed the suit in the Jerusalem court on behalf of 3 Israeli concert ticket holders. The lawsuit intends to give, quote, real consequences to those who selectively target Israel and seek to impose an unjust and illegal boycott against the Jewish state. The 3 Israelis were seeking about $13,000 in damages. Lorde announced late last year she was cancelling her planned June 2018 concert in Tel Aviv. Now, that's where that part of the news story stops. Commentary goes, you want to run boycotts, interfere with other people's rights, all in pursuit of your own virtue-signalling bullying and Twitter activism. Welcome to catch-up. Let that be a lesson to others. Meanwhile, little Justine thinks it is no big deal. I'm trying to work this out because I just pulled it off the printer. I haven't had a chance to pre-read it. So let me just read. Meanwhile, little Justine thinks this is no big deal. Sally grabbed this screenshot. Isherman points out the sharp end of pain coming her way. Sharad Hardin, back to the news story, have won $200 million for victims' families, $2 billion against terror organisations, and $600 million in frozen terror assets. Nitsana Dashan Leitner is no budget bin activist flea lawyer. They take on big fights and they win. That's the important thing. It's all fun and games until you get sued. Justine, I'm not sure your student loan can cover those damages. Life just got serious for Justine and Nadia. It is all, well, I won't use the word, and giggles until someone gets sued. But what I don't know is how they can succeed in by getting a decision in an Israeli court, how they can succeed and have it imposed on a couple of New Zealand citizens. That's the part that's missing for me. So I look forward to finding out how that works legally internationally. But there's another question too. If the Israeli group, Sharad Hardin, has won those cases, $200 million to victims' families, $2 billion against terror organisations, and $600 million in frozen terror assets. The question is, did they get the money, or was it just awarded in the court? They won the case. What I'm saying is, did they just win the case in an Israeli court, and that's where it stops because they can't impose it on an outside body? I don't know the answer. So I'm going to be intrigued to have that established one way or the other. But thank you for sending it to me. That distracted me from where I was going to go. Now I'm being encouraged to get on to the State of the Union speech. While I want to, I'm tempted to leave it until after the news. But in the interim, let me quote you something written by Greg Sheridan from The Australian, the Foreign Minister. Donald Trump's critics constantly ask him to be presidential and statesmanlike. Well, now he has certainly given a presidential and statesmanlike State of the Union address. Will they give him the benefit of the doubt? The president's speech shows the superiority of teleprompter Trump over Twitter Trump. By the way, this was, I've heard it said, and I'm not going to disagree with it, this was the best State of the Union speech for a long time, including Obama, including Bush, and maybe even including Clinton, for a whole multitude of reasons. A whole multitude of reasons. I've got some stats, if you're interested in them, and I know you will be. In 2010, President Obama, in his State of the Union speech, mentioned the personal pronoun I 105 times. He was renowned for it. I. When he stuttered, he even said I. It's true. It's you can find the recording. He said I in his State of the Union speech 105 times. Obama last night used it 29 times. In referring to himself in various ways, like I, me, Obama referred to himself, self-reference, 142 times. So we've got Trump using I, the personal pronoun, 29 times. He used we 129 times, and our 104 times. And by the way, did he stick to script or what? He did. He did not vary. He stuck to script. He stuck to the speech, and it was unquestionably, I think, his best speech ever. He's still not good at it. He still struggles with teleprompter. Obama was fabulous with the teleprompter, but he was not nearly so hot when it came to ad-libbing, just making an unconstructed speech. Whereas Trump has engaged people for, I'm just drawing differences to our attention. Trump gave speeches that ran an hour and a half. without script, without notes, without teleprompter, when he was on the campaign trail. He did it 4 times a day, or up to. I'm not saying they were great speeches, but he did it without going, ay. Anyway, the point is the contrasting difference between the way it's reported. Even we, on this radio station this morning, made particular reference to the reception that Mrs. Trump got when she arrived yesterday. But it was pointed out, and this is in all the mainstream media in America, that she arrived separately from her husband, breaking usual tradition. She did not travel there with him. You know why? It's very simple. They had a lot of guests that were surrounding her in the gallery. She travelled with them. That's why. The Trumps went home together, and that was announced by the White House, but she travelled with the guests, which I think is a damn good thing to do. I mean, it's not virtue signalling, it's doing something appropriate. Anyway, there's plenty more that could be said, and probably will be. 9 to 11, News Talk Sydney. News Talk to be 7 to 11. Just in case you haven't seen, writes Sir John, maybe the newsroom could follow up. Amazing promotional language. And then there's a PS, and I'll tell you that in a second. This is something to do with Ratepayers New Zealand, which is attached, if I'm correct, to taxpayers, the Taxpayers Union. ATEED used ratepayer money to sponsor sex parties. I don't know the story, but this is the second time I've received it in the last half hour. A few minutes ago, we went public with our concerns that the tourism promotion arm of Auckland Council, ATEED, is using ratepayer money to sponsor Kiwi First, an event of the Auckland Pride Festival. This event is described on the ATEED-sponsored website, and the following is verbatim. New Zealand's biggest... See, this is what happens when you don't pre-read, but this is what it says. So I'm going to read it. Or am I? No, I'm not going to. I'm not going to. It's crass and vulgar. Crass and vulgar. Very. It then goes on, the press release then says, call us prudes, but ratepayers should not be subsidising sex parties, regardless of the sexual orientation of those involved. AT added insult to injury. Earlier in the week, we approached AT and asked precisely how much money Pride had received for the festival and the promotion of the Kiwi First event and others. Initially, we were told the information was easily available. However, once the spin doctors clicked why we were asking for the information, they backpedaled. They refused to give us the information and said that we would need to lodge an official information request with the council. That is, they're forcing us to wait a month for a response. We think ATEED's behaviour is simply appalling. Once again, a council agency has no regard whatsoever for transparency. Last year, Phil Goff justified his hotel tax by saying the money was needed to promote ATEED's events. We wonder how the hotel tax would have been received if the public knew it was for, among other things, sex party promotion. And that's essentially all we need to concern ourselves with. Now, the part that I would not read out is not just distasteful in the extreme, it's disgusting. But remember that they were quoting directly from the promotion. The event is described on the ATEED-sponsored website. Are you reading it? It makes me sick to read it. It makes me sicker to think, and I'm not overreacting, it makes me sicker to think that my rate money is going to supporting it. Now, a lot of you are going to be saying, I want to know what it says. I don't, well, I'm sorry, you're going to have to find out for yourself. Probably, if you go to ratepayers.nz, you'll find it. And while you can read it in print, and it's a matter of choice, I'm certainly not broadcasting it. No, I'm not going to say any more. How long have I got? All right. So here's 45 seconds more of Greg Sheridan. I got distracted. This, while talking about the president's speech, shows the superiority of teleprompter Trump over Twitter Trump. And that's where I got distracted. This was a strong speech. It had a pretty good story to tell since Trump became president a year ago. The U.S. economy has added 2.4 million jobs, including 200,000 in manufacturing. Unemployment levels are way down, but African-American unemployment and Hispanic unemployment are particularly way down, with the lowest figures on record. Unemployment figures, that is. And he's taking credit for it. 7, make it 8 after 11. 0800 80 1080. Email is Leighton at newstalkzb.co.nz. And you can text on 9292. Yes. Now, a number of people are sending me copies of this now. How do you get it? You must be on their mailing list, the ratepayers, that's all. I assume you've seen the latest from the Auckland Council. It would have been unbelievable 10 years ago. I shook my head when Auckland copied Sydney in sponsoring and being involved in gay parades. Well, it's been there for a while, But now explicit material using our dollars. No wonder I feel old, tired, and no longer caring. I plan to ask my kids what they think. Anyway, I wonder what your audience think. Well, I've raised it. It's not one that we're prepared to discuss. For the simple reason that the language that's used is unusable as far as I'm concerned on this particular program. And still they roll in. Thank you. Nobody else needs to spend it. I got it all covered. Let me go back to Greg Sheridan's comments on Trump's... No, let me not at the moment. Let me give you mine. It has been said, and I'm not disagreeing with it, the best State of the Union speech for decades. State of the Union speeches usually are about the individual giving the speech. And while there was certainly some of that, yesterday's wasn't. It was more about where the country's at, where it's going. It was what somebody else said, and I've gleaned a number of different comments from different places, a real State of the Union speech and where the country is going under the present administration, or where it's intended to go. The use that Trump made of the guests, who are usually of a different ilk. If you saw it, you know exactly what I mean. If you didn't see it, it was worth seeing. Seriously. These are the guests in the gallery, which is where the First Lady sits, and they usually sit with her and around her, and that's exactly how it was. And these are the people that she travelled to the speech with. I don't know whether they were at the White House before. I think it's highly likely. But wherever it was, she travelled to the Capitol with them. And if I remember correctly, the first one was a young kid. When I say young kid, 12. At first I thought it was Donald Trump's son with a haircut when I first saw him, but it wasn't. And this was a kid who realised that on a particular occasion, I can't think what it was, that the graves in the veterans' graves weren't marked with flags, and so he started the campaign. And now there are, how many? Does anybody remember? Lots and lots and lots, thousands and thousands of flags that have been provided to go on the headstones or whatever. Anyway, he was the first one. The two that stood out for me, the two different guests, in one case group, one was a group, was the two sets of parents, black American parents, whose two daughters, so you got two husbands and wives, mothers and fathers, two sets, they were sitting together, whose two daughters had been murdered by the South American gang. And the murderers arrived as unaccompanied minors, supposedly, and the two daughters had been killed by them. And these two sets of parents sitting there while the president read some details about what had taken place were struggling to hold themselves together. One father in particular who had a diamond stud or imitation anyway in each earlobe. He was wearing a suit and tie and what have you, dressed for the occasion, and he was a very presentable man. He just had that was a distinguishing feature, and you couldn't miss it. He was struggling. In fact, he was shedding tears, and I believe both of the fathers were shedding tears as Trump talked, keeping in mind that these people are there, but they don't have to be. They are there as guests, and they've been invited, and they have accepted. And I felt incredibly sorry for them because they were being tortured by this. But they wanted to be there, obviously. And it was extremely well handled. The last example, and this was arguably the most impressive, was a guy, Mrs. Producer, did you see this? Was a young man, I don't know how old, but let's say he was in his late 20s. I don't know. From North Korea. And the story was, well, I don't want to go into it too much because I can't remember the fine detail. The story was that he was stealing some coal, or that was his intention, from a rail car or something. He was going to steal some coal to use it to swap for some food. That's how hungry he was and how hungry his siblings were. Anyway, according to the story that was told last night, he fell asleep on the rail lines because he was so weak from hunger. And a train came along, and I don't know whether it was it was referred to as limbs, that he lost one leg, possibly two, don't know. Probably one, actually, now that I think about it a little more. He lost a limb, the train ran over it, and he lost a leg. He was arrested, and I can't remember again the exact sequence of events. But he was tortured, he was imprisoned, various aspects of this. He went to China, and when he came back to North Korea, he was asked, did he meet any Christians while he was away? And he had. Bottom line is, he travelled on crutches across vast spaces to escape through China. And he now lives in Seoul, in South Korea, and he helps people who are escaping and what have you, and makes broadcasts into North Korea. He was a very presentable, respectable young man. But he was a North Korean who had been through the torture mill, lost a limb, and the very last thing that Trump said was he still keeps the crutches that he hobbled with to escape over those, and I think he referred to hundreds or thousands of miles. And the young man stood up in the gallery and held up the crutches. And it was emotional. He stood there with the applause rolling continuously, and he continued to hold the two crutches up there. Now, some people might say this is milking a situation, for the president's benefit and everything. You lot can bugger off. It was nothing of the sort. This was in praise of America and why people go to America, why people struggle to get to America in many cases, because of what they have been through and the places that they live. These were real refugees, even though he now lives in Seoul. but I got the impression he was now an American citizen, but that wasn't detailed. I just had that impression. But it was incredibly emotional. It was, the whole speech was littered, if you like, with these guests and their stories. Another one, very quickly, was a cop who got involved somehow with a family that got wiped out except for a small child. He went home, told his wife the story, and they decided immediately to adopt the child because the rest of the family had been killed by Crims. And they were there as well. It was the use of guests in the way that it should be, because it was promoting America and its attitudes, not personal grievances to anybody. So for those of you who saw it, and I have no idea how many, what was your reaction? What were the highlights? What were the downfalls? And there were some, because there always are. Just what did you think? What was the impression? And for any of you who did see and had a different opinion in the first place, I just wonder if you were affected by it, as far as your opinion of the President is concerned. 0800 80 1080 at 18 past 11. News talks at B21 after 11. Josh, morning.
Hi, good morning, Leighton. How are you?
I'm very good.
I haven't heard much about the presidential speech personally, but what I have heard are excerpts that I did hear on the show yesterday, just on News Talk ZB. And one of them was about Trump talking about developing more powerful and deadly nuclear weapons. And I just can't believe we'd want to go down that path.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the whole, the hour-long speech.
Hour 20.
An hour 20 can have as much, prosperity and economic growth and as much you want to talk about, but use one of those nuclear weapons, it all goes to custody. Why would you want to develop that? His argument
I think the only way I can answer you is if that's what you think, then nothing will change your mind, or very little. I can't imagine anything that would. It's a case, as it always has been, of peace through strength. And if you are, and this was the Reagan policy, and previous American presidents' policies. If you hope for peace but prepare for war.
I understand that, and there's always a but. Why would you think the nuclear weapons that they possess at the moment, the thousands of warheads, are not enough? If they use 10% of them, they'll obliterate anybody they came up against.
Mm-hmm. The idea, and I'm not trying to sell it. I'm just stating it as I believe it is. The idea is that if you are powerful to the point that it's not worth anybody else attacking you, then you're going to have that peace through preparation. It has been it's been applicable up until this particular point, that you wouldn't, one country would not attack. Now let me take it in a different direction. There's something nagging in the back of my head, and I've just realised what it was. There are further developments in warfare. There's no question, and so you have to stay on top of it, one way or the other. The big fear at the moment that I have is that an EMP will be employed, and there is considerable opinion that North Korea has the capacity to do it now, either that or it's very close to it. But an EMP that could knock out practically everything in America simply by a nuclear explosion in the upper atmosphere. Now, if you can counter that with the ability to convince in this case, the North Koreans or whoever it might be that wanted to try it on, that it wasn't worth them trying it because of the results, then you achieved the result without utilising the means that you have at hand. Now, I know that it's an argument that's hard to sell to people who just look at it from one particular aspect. And I don't argue it comfortably, by the way, but I believe in the principle.
Right. I know where you're coming from.
I mean, if you, and I've got to say this very quickly, if you being a country, are below the power ability of an enemy, they mightn't have to use theirs. They simply have the power to blackmail you into doing what they want you to do, because you are not prepared to counter them. And so the standoff situation is not in your favour. Now, where that leads us all in the end, God only knows. And he'd be the only one. Appreciate the call, though. Thank you. It is 26 past 11, News Talk ZB. It's 28 past 10, News Talk ZB. Leighton, if I lived in America, I would most certainly be a Republican after seeing what the Democrats stand for. Globalism, destruction of the family, open borders and the like. Donald Trump's speech was very moving, and that young North Korean was struggling to hold back the tears. Yeah, you couldn't miss that, could you? Pardon me. Regarding that caller about the nuclear rearmaments, previous presidents, Obama especially, have weakened the American country so that the likes of Russia, China, Iran and North Korea had no respect for them. And Trump is readdressing this imbalance. I say it again, left-leaning liberal progressive Marxists are of a lower IQ and not as attractive as the likes of you and I. Well, that's a bit personal. News Talks will be 27 to midday. Now, the government's Royal Commission into Child Abuse in State Care, and the Prime Minister has been announcing the details of the inquiry. Gia Garrick has been at the announcement. Good morning.
Good morning, Leighton.
And so, report to me.
Yeah, so this is the government announcing the details around its promise to investigate the child abuse in state care. Now, it's announced the terms of reference for the inquiry, which is a 50-year period going from 1950 through to 1999, but it hasn't made that a certainty. So questioning from reporters today showed that they would actually extend that should the consultation on the terms of reference come back, that we should do the last 17, 18 years or possibly previous to that 1950 date. Now, the reason I've chosen this terms of reference is because most of the institutions that the state sent kids into opened in the early 1950s. So their thought around this on consultation done so far is that most of that abuse, or even all of it, happened post 1950. Now, this doesn't go as far, this Royal Commission they've announced today, it doesn't go as far as Australia's Royal Commission into institutional responses to child sex abuse, as they're not including religious institutes, community groups or sports clubs in the inquiry that the government will undertake. Now, they've got 3 years to complete this. They want to do it within the parliamentary term, but Jacinda Ardern has said that if that time frame is extended, she will not be unhappy with that.
Mm-hmm. So when does it actually get underway?
Yeah, so there's a few months of consultation on the terms of reference first, and the inquiry will then get underway after that. They so the next year essentially is to establish how it's going to happen. Now, it's going to cost the first year $12 million, which is obviously a large amount of money, but the government says it is not going to stop any funding in terms of years on from that. And yeah, in terms of that time frame on that, 6 months until it starts, so mid of this year, until the actual people can come forward and victims can come forward and actually talk to the government about their abuse and about what happened to them. And then from there, that's just going to extend from there in terms of when they might finish.
All right. In terms of, how can I put this, in terms of importance / public acceptance, how big is this announcement?
Yeah, this is huge. Now, this is something that Jacinda Ardern has fought for from opposition as well. This is something that she cares about deeply as our Prime Minister. And so she said she wants to send the strongest possible signal that her government sees this as a huge issue. Now, that's why they've made it a Royal Commission. Now, Royal Commission is the largest sort of inquiry a government can set. And she says it's a chance to confront our history as a nation and make sure that her government and that future governments don't make the same mistakes again. So she's expecting there to be recommendations from this that she can then look at. And if there is any changes that she can make, she is committed to making those changes.
Lovely. All right, Gia, thank you. Appreciate it. Gia Garrick from Parliament. News Talks at B at 24 to midday. Raywin, good morning.
Good morning, Leighton. I just want to thank you so much for your awesome program and the fact that you actually give a defined truth about what goes on out there. I think it's amazing. I watched the union speech yesterday in its entirety. Just a couple of things for you. The policeman, that was a lady that was a heroin addict and she was going to shoot up. And she was expecting her child, and she had couldn't feed it. And so, anyway, the policeman didn't know what to do. She was so desperate, so that's how he came to take the child. And the young Korean man, he actually lost both his legs.
He did?
Yes, he lost both his legs.
Well, he did say limbs. It was plural.
Yeah. And he was actually, he had both artificial legs there yesterday. But it was an amazing speech. And, for all those folks out there who have negative connotations about Trump, I've been to America and I speak to a lot of Americans who live there. And, even though he gets a bit carried away with his Twitter accounts and so forth, but he has made a significant change in America. And the Americans that I speak to are so looking forward to him because he has made changes to the lowest employment ever. And people here, I've heard them say, oh, he's a racist. But he's done amazing things for the black people there, and he's bought all the... he's bringing back a lot of the car places there. And when I was there in the States, you could see a lot of the people, they were just disheartened when Obama was in there after his second term, and they were just waiting for someone to come and lift them out. And now, when you talk to them, they just have this air of, they're really looking forward to the future. And I've talked to people all ages, from young to my age, late 50s and 60s, and the whole spectrum. And, and yet it really disappoints me when I see last night on the news on TV1, all they could talk about was Kennedy's speech to the Democrats after. There was no positive about...
Surely not.
Yes, that's all they showed. And I thought,
I can't believe that.
Yeah, no, and I thought, how leftist are we actually going? And I thought, all the good things, that's he's changing and he's standing out there. And we have short memories, and I believe, I remember Obama in the last 5 hours he was in the White House. He ticked the box to pay the Middle Eastern country, one of them, I think it was Saudi Arabia, millions and millions of dollars in cash he gave to them, and yet his own vets, and I've seen them on the streets in America, were homeless. And he ignored the vets, and I've spoken to them, and they were just they served their country, and they were just, left out there. Mm. And yet at least...
that baby that the policeman's wife had was obviously the child. I just didn't know, because I wasn't... There were times when I was either on the phone or distracted by something else,
Yeah, the little baby was, the girl was a drug addict, and the little baby that was eventually born, she was about ready to have it, and it was full of drugs and what have you, and had to go to withdrawal. But that lovely couple.
But was that the child that she was holding?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, it had to be.
Yes, and so they went through with the wife, with with the girl and, with the baby, with all the withdrawals and that, and eventually they were able to take it home. And those sort of stories are so heartening. And, and that's the real what's going on out there. And, I'm a Kiwi born and bred, and I think it's really sad that, our country just so Trump bashing. You read it in the paper and you see it always in our headlines and you see it always.
We've got a very biased media in New Zealand.
Oh, I know. And I think, talk about fake news in the States. Man, we get a lot of it too. And I just thank God for people like you who
all right.
put things in perspective and at least...
Raywin, don't embarrass me. I appreciate it. Thanks for the call.
You're welcome.
News talks about it's 18 to midday. I'm told by a friend of mine that the caller was wrong. Trump's speech had good coverage. Kennedy, yes. Joe Kennedy III, but much less. Quite appropriately. One could make comments about Kennedy, but one won't. Steve, morning.
Yeah, g'day, Leighton. How are you, mate?
Very good.
That's to go. Hey, I was just listening to the show. It's funny how one thing leads to another. The gentleman that was talking about Trump's mention of nuclear weapons, there's actually a very interesting article in the Sydney Morning Herald this morning about the Iron Sea. It's about British and American navies and Southeast Asia and all the rest of it. But anyway, one part of it refers to the nuclear side of things and how America's nuclear arsenal is basically dilapidated, for lack of a better term. It's old, it hasn't been maintained, and they're really 20-odd years behind the Soviet blocs of Russia and China. So, yeah, it's actually a correlation in regards to it. So if you do get a chance, I recommend you read the article. It ties in quite well with what was mentioned in the speech.
Well, he talked, did he not, of what was the term he used? Upgraded, updated.
Absolutely.
Or
so
something.
There was a defence spend freeze under Obama, so all the scheduled maintenance and upgrading of the missile systems, and it just didn't happen. So now they're that far behind China and Russia that they urgently need to do something. So, yeah, but if you get a chance, read the article. It's on the front page on the website, but it's a very good read about the Iron Sea.
Well, they might have changed it because I'm looking at it and I can't see.
Sydney Morning Herald.
Yeah, I've got the Herald up, but I can't see that story. But I'll find it. I will find it. All right.
Cheers.
Cheers to you. Thank you. News talks to me. It's 13 to 12. Number is 0800 80 1080. Well, it's about time you came back to work, Mr. Jensen.
Oh, dear me. I was going to say...
I thought I'd get in first.
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah, here we are. What a beautiful day, isn't it?
No.
Did you... obviously, you wouldn't have seen the moon either last night. Because I went to bed a little bit early, I set the alarm for 11 o'clock, went outside, and just all I could see was that woman cloud cover. But I tell you what, the tide this morning was unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's so high. It's just, it's amazing to see, eh?
Oh, it's caused by man-made global warming, surely.
Yes.
Nothing to do with the moon?
My kids just about every single time. Yep. I agree with you, mate. I agree with you. So I hope you had a good break. We did. It was lovely spending a bit of time with family, and we had some beautiful weather, although those easterlies are a bit of a pain. But, boy, the water temperature's been phenomenal. And I don't know if it's got anything to do with it, but the other day I was in the water for quite a sort of a bit of an extended period, and I got attacked by lice. They obviously saw me as a big juicy hunk of thing to eat. I've never itched so bad in my entire life, mate.
How long did it last?
It's still with me, and I had to go to the doctor in the finish because I just could not stop scratching. And so it was about 3 days, I suppose.
That happened to me once a few years ago.
Yeah.
In a Singapore hotel room. Seriously.
Oh, really?
Seriously, yeah. It was bad. We both had the same problem. Anyway, listen, let's talk wet and forget.
Okay, well...
The reason you're here.
Yeah, I know. hey, we've got a painter doing some work at home at the moment. And he said to me the other day, he said, I'll tell you what, he said, I've never used your stuff before. He said, I hear you banging on about it all the time. He said, you're wet and forget in that new sniper nozzle with the bottle you just plug the hose onto. He said, a customer wanted me to do their roof and get up there and water blast and all that, and I was not keen at all. So I said, look, I don't know how well it works. He said, but the way this guy talks about it, it's a product he used for 30-odd years when they were contracting. He said, do you want me to give that a shot? So he bought 3 packs. It was a huge roof, sprayed it on, obviously couldn't see much for starters. He said 3 to 4 months later, we drove past it. He said it looked like a brand new roof again. So if you've got a tile roof out there and you're reasonably practical, you don't necessarily have to get on the roof if it's not too much of an awkward shape. You can actually get your ladder up to the gutter level, apply the wet and forget because the sniper nozzle's got a really long reach, and it'll clean up by itself. So there you go. And of course, the one we're pushing this month is the window witch. That you know how good a product is when you have customers coming and rebuying on a regular basis, and we're finding that now it's been out for nearly, just a bit over 12 months. And the number of people coming back and repurchasing that product is phenomenal. 8 metre reach with the sniper nozzle, and we have the extendable window pads, which will get you up over 6.5 to 7 metres, so you don't have to get off the ground with the 2nd-storey windows. The big deal with it, no squeegee required. Apply the product, agitate lightly, rinse until all the suds are gone, and your windows will look like they've been professionally cleaned. So there you go, mate.
Beautiful. Thank you. Wet and forget.
0800
Yes.
303,000, and the website wetandforget.co.nz to find all our stores.
Yeah, wet and forget. Lots of great products that really work. Thank you, Rodney. News Talks at me. It's 10 to midday. I cannot see this report story in the Sydney Morning Herald. Undoubtedly, it's there somewhere. Somebody can dig it out. Sean, good morning.
Oh, how are you, Leighton? Just on Trump's speech, I think when he really did some serious damage to the Democrats last night when he was speaking about DACA and the Dreamers, where he said, you know, he would offer a pathway, I think, to 1.8 million of these children born to legal immigrants in the United States if the Democrats agreed to give him his wool and get rid of chain migration and have more sensible immigration going forward. So I think what he achieved there is he actually stripped away their bait that they're going to dangle for this upcoming election. And they've been using that, I think, since Obama's come into power, they've been saying they're going to do it, and they've never done it. They've sort of hung on to it for votes. So I think he might have really dealt the Democrats a massive blow there.
Democrats might get a blow occasionally, but they don't give up.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is now it's out there that he's saying, yes, we will give you a pathway to citizenship, and he will do it. So, I mean, he actually said that a few months ago before they shut down the government. So all the Democrats had to do was move forward with the plan on the table, but they sort of tried to use it against him. So, I mean, it's out there in the open now. He's told the world. So it's going to be interesting. I think it was quite a strong move and very clever on his part.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And, yeah, that's all I got.
Very good. Thank you, Sean.
Okay, Leighton. Cheers, mate.
News Talk to me 6 to 12. Biased media in this country. No. Really? Kath says, was refreshing to hear your listener telling the truth about what really is happening in the States. Had a very similar conversation with a couple of American surgeons here in Auckland over the holiday break. They couldn't speak more highly of what Mr. Trump was achieving. When you use that sort of language, they couldn't speak more highly of what Mr. Trump was achieving, that gets under the skin of a lot of people, even here in New Zealand, who won't have a bar of it. He's a vulgar, cretinous, ignorant pig of a person, as far as they're concerned. I've got to say that there was grounding for that sort of belief in the first place. As Greg Sheridan's column said, or the headline that it used was Trump's State of the Union speech, a sign of growing maturity. Others are saying, of course, that a couple of people have written and said, let's see if I can... I've only got 30 seconds, or thereabouts. Let's see if I can find one quickly. Trump's speech. Here we are. Morning, Leighton. Trump's address was good, perhaps because it was scripted by others. Well, they're all written by speechwriters. But the speechwriter's responsibility is to write a speech that the president wants to deliver. That's the point. That's why they have speechwriters. They have speechwriters who write according to the desires of the person they're writing the speech for. Otherwise, you wouldn't be reading it. What else does this email say? Including those who are concerned that he cannot speak the truth when he ad-libs. Even if half, you mean like if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor, and if you like your program, you can keep it, and all of that sort of truth. Even if half of it's true, it's a good sign. The staged supporting crew were moving, but knowing how insincere Trump is with people, clearly a total theatrical performance. If you really believe that, then you're sadly misinformed. Sadly. And you do yourself an injustice in believing so. However, thank goodness, says the author, it was not Hillary delivering the State of the Union. Be thankful for small mercies. No, not at all. That's being thankful for a big mercy. Shall return in the morning at 8:37. Till then, you have a great day and take care.
Thank you.
The Heart Foundation urgently needs hundreds of big-hearted volunteers to hit the streets to collect life-saving funds for heart research. More than 6,000 Kiwis die from New Zealand's single biggest killer, heart disease, every year, and more than 185,000 Kiwis are living with it right now. A few hours of your time